They say every neighborhood has that one person who treats the community rules like a personal crusade. In ours, that title belonged to Harold Finch. He swaggered down the sidewalks as if he wore a uniform, notebook clutched under one arm, phone always ready to document every minor infraction. No one had elected him. No committee had appointed him. He simply declared himself the unofficial enforcer of the neighborhood code. And last week, he went too far, something my grandfather would not tolerate. But before I get into it, drop a comment and tell me which country you're tuning in from. Let's see how far this tale travels. It all started with the faint squeak of our backyard gate at 5:30 in the morning. I was half asleep, spooning cereal into my mouth when Grandpa, rocking gently on the porch, muttered, "Here he comes again." Sure enough, Harold was scaling the fence like some stealthy intruder, phone in hand, snapping pictures of Grandpa's prized zucchini and pepper plants. His justification? They supposedly violated the neighborhood's visual harmony. Can you believe it? A 76-year-old war veteran tending a few vegetables was apparently a felony in Harold's eyes. I wanted to rush outside and give him a piece of my mind. But Grandpa raised a hand in that patient, measured way he always does. "Let a fool parade himself long enough," he said, "and he'll hand you his own conclusion." That was Grandpa, steady, calm, a rock against Harold's relentless energy. This wasn't Harold's first intrusion. On two separate occasions, we'd caught him snooping near the garden shed, muttering under his breath about property standards. There was even one morning when he rattled the back door as if he expected to find stolen goods hidden inside. Grandpa had reported him to the HOA board, but the president, Margaret Fields, just waved it off with a polite smile. "Oh, Harold's passionate. He really cares about the neighborhood," she said. Passionate. The man was blatantly violating North Carolina's trespassing laws. The HOA, of course, hid behind procedural loopholes, insisting it was internal enforcement and thus above reproach. Grandpa didn't buy it. He called the sheriff's office, and while the deputies were sympathetic, they laid out the harsh reality. Unless we caught Harold in the act and filed charges, immediately, it was our word against his. That's when Grandpa began plotting. For the next 3 days, he retreated to the garage, humming old folk songs while I handed him wrenches, pliers, and screwdrivers. By the 4th day, our rusty iron gate had been transformed. Grandpa had installed a low-voltage electric system, entirely legal under North Carolina electrical code, as long as it was clearly marked. And mark it he did. A bright yellow sign hung proudly on the gate. Warning, electrified gate. Trespassers will be shocked. True to form, Harold showed up right on schedule before dawn. Grandpa settled into his rocking chair with a steaming cup of black coffee, and I crouched by the window, heart hammering. Harold crept up, boots crunching the gravel, muttering about violations under his breath. The second his gloved hand wrapped around the gate, zap, a sharp jolt shot through him, and he yelped like a cat caught in a sprinkler. He stumbled backward, arms flailing wildly, landing face first in the dirt before scrambling upright, wincing and limping toward the street. Grandpa didn't budge an inch. He just leaned back in his chair, eyes sparkling with quiet satisfaction. "That," he murmured, "is the sound of justice." The whole street was alive with whispers. Harold Finch, limping down Oakwood Lane, had become the morning spectacle. Neighbors peeked from driveways, trying not to laugh as the self-appointed neighborhood enforcer struggled to maintain dignity. He told anyone who'd listen that Grandpa had set illegal traps on his property. But most folks knew better. Everyone had witnessed Harold sneaking into yards, measuring flower beds with rulers, or peering through curtains after dark. He was a menace, and for once, he had gotten a taste of his own medicine. Still, Harold wasn't about to let it go quietly. By noon, the HOA called an emergency meeting. I went with Grandpa to ensure things didn't spiral, though I should have known it would be a circus. Margaret Fields, the HOA president, sat at the head of the long oak table, pearls glinting, her ever-present practiced smile firmly in place. Harold sat beside her, arm in a sling for maximum drama, pointing at Grandpa as if he'd uncovered a criminal mastermind. "This man," Harold announced, voice shaking with feigned outrage, "is endangering the neighborhood. He's rigged an electrified device. That gate nearly." Grandpa didn't flinch. He leaned forward calmly, setting a neatly folded piece of paper on the table. "That, Mrs. Fields, is a permit issued under the state electrical code. Fully legal and properly authorized, he said, voice steady. And of course, I had posted the required warning notice, bright and unmistakable. Margaret Fields tried to wriggle out of it. Legal or not, she said, it's aggressive. It goes against the spirit of community living. The HOA has the authority to regulate installations. Grandpa's voice dropped into that gravelly tone that always made me sit straighter in my chair. Regulate? Sure. Trespass? Absolutely not. North Carolina law makes it a crime to enter private property without permission. Harold has done it 3 times already. I'm done warning him. Next time, I'll press charges and let a judge handle it. You could feel the energy in the room shift. Neighbors who had been silent suddenly nodded. One woman cleared her throat and said, "He came into my backyard last month to measure my rose bushes. I thought I was alone in this." Another added, "He photographed my kids' bikes and called them an eyesore." The momentum was unmistakable, and Harold's face flushed redder with each confession. Margaret banged her gavel, trying to reclaim control. "This is not the place for accusations. We are here to discuss Mr. Thompson's." "No, ma'am." Grandpa cut her off, calm but firm. "We're discussing Harold's obsession. You let him run around like he owns the neighborhood. And now he's learning what happens when you step on the wrong porch. If you're enjoying this HOA saga so far, make sure to like and subscribe. The story is only going to get wilder." Harold did not handle the humiliation well. After that meeting, he doubled down. For 2 days straight, he prowled the block in his dented pickup, creeping past driveways like a hawk circling prey, lingering in front of ours as if waiting for something to happen. Grandpa barely reacted, sitting on the porch with his thermos of coffee, eyes sharp, unblinking. On the 3rd night, Harold's curiosity, or his obsession, got the better of him. Just past midnight, I woke to the unmistakable rustle near the gate. I peeked through the blinds, and there he was, creeping along the fence under the faint glow of the streetlight, flashlight in one hand, bolt cutters in the other. Harold muttered curses under his breath as he edged closer to the gate. He was seriously going to break in, I whispered to myself. Grandpa was already ready, sitting in his rocking chair like a seasoned general. From his chair, he produced a small handheld remote. "Watch this, kid," he murmured, eyes locked on Harold. The moment Harold clamped the cutters onto the steel, Grandpa clicked the remote. Zap! A low electric hum surged through the wires, and Harold's body jolted as if he'd grabbed a nest of angry hornets. He yelped, dropped the cutters, and stumbled backward into the muddy grass. Grandpa calmly lifted his coffee to his lips and muttered, "Trespassing again." Then he pulled out his phone, already recording. Every stumble, every curse, every flailing arm in the mud was captured in crisp HD. But Harold wasn't finished. He whipped out his own phone and shouted into it, dialing 911. "Attempted murder. This lunatic is trying to kill me with an illegal fence." Within 5 minutes, red and blue lights flooded the yard. Officers poured out of their vehicles, hands hovering near their holsters, scanning the scene. Harold, drenched in mud and clutching his arm, and Grandpa, sitting calmly as if it were just any other night. "Sir," one officer asked Grandpa, "is there an active electrical device on that gate?" "Yes," Grandpa replied evenly. "Fully registered, permitted, marked with warnings, and documented. Here's the paperwork." He slid a laminated permit across the porch table, without standing. Then he handed over his phone, still playing the video in real time. The officers watched as Harold climbed, cut, and zapped himself, each misstep recorded in perfect clarity. One officer raised an eyebrow, deadpan. "So you trespassed?" Harold sputtered, "No, I was conducting an HOA inspection." "Inspection?" the other officer asked, brow arched. "At midnight, with bolt cutters." The law left no room for doubt. Under state code, Harold was guilty of criminal trespass, vandalism, attempted theft, and his 911 call constituted filing a false report. Charges piled up quickly. The officers cuffed him right there, in front of the brightly glowing gate. Harold shouted about conspiracies, about Grandpa being a vigilante, but no one was listening. Grandpa simply took another sip of coffee, eyes serene, as the flashing lights reflected off the electric fence he had perfectly, legally installed. Harold ranted about Grandpa being a danger to the community, but no one was listening. Neighbors had gathered during the commotion, and for the first time, They weren't whispering. They were clapping, cheering, and shaking their heads in disbelief at his antics. Grandpa leaned back in his rocking chair, eyes glinting, and nodded at me. "Sometimes, son," he said with a sly smile. "Justice just needs a little electricity." Harold, meanwhile, sat in the back of the cruiser, drenched in sweat, his dignity in ruins, and his self-appointed HOA badge confiscated on the spot. The very gate he thought he could scale had become the instrument of his downfall. Because when you tangle with a man like Grandpa, it's not just about losing one battle. You set off a chain reaction that lights the fuse for the entire neighborhood. Harold had learned the hard way that obsessive control has consequences. And in this little corner of Oakwood Lane, the community had finally taken back the night. Grandpa sipped his coffee, content, while the neighbors murmured their admiration. And I realized something. In the battle between stubborn rules and common sense, patience and a little cunning always wins.